Mm.
Hello, welcome to All Gathered Up, the show that runs parallel with the Great British Sewing Bee and goes into detail of maybe some of the techniques and skills that come up. Because we've got a lot more time here on YouTube. And as always, you know we can do it because we have Master Tailor Couturier, Carol Alayne with us. As always, good to see you again, Carol.
Hello, Stuart. Oh, Friday night. It's been quite a long week.
As
I'm
it,
thinking,
but
oh,
but look at that.
yeah.
We can relax a bit, talk sewing.
Mm.
Uh, I think well, and maybe have a beverage or two. It's a good way of spending a Friday night.
Indeed.
Oh,
Yep, that's it.
the
And
days
kind
of
of,
going out clubbing are long gone.
oh, please. Yes. Anything with crowds, anything with noise.
Oh, exactly.
No, this
Yeah.
is better to just chill out, have a nice chat. And I find these really refreshing.
Oh, I'm pleased. I love them. And viewers, Carol went back and watched a couple of episodes, and she then messaged me and said, oh, "Stuart, I love how interested you are. I didn't realise how animated you are." I'm like, I'm loving it. It's genuine. We love doing these shows, don't we? We are fascinated. We love
Oh,
learning. We love talking the ideas, and we love sharing them with our viewers, don't we?
we do. And I love the conversation that brews up after each episode. And it always takes me all the way back to my first lessons in Savile Row, where the old guard would always say, no, that's okay. Every mistake is a new learning
Yeah.
experience. We never stop learning, and tools are changing, and fabrics are changing, and methods of, fastening are changing. So there's always something new and something new to learn.
Absolutely, and clearly, the viewers out there love the show as well because they've been commenting away, and I've seen you've been commenting away on the last episode. So that's lovely. Thank you, viewers. You,
Definitely.
in a nice way. I haven't said anything to you about this, Carol. We've had more viewers on All Gathered Up and on Unpicked this year than ever before, and we
Is it
get a
really?
little bit of ads money. You know how Google works and YouTube works. When you go over a certain limit, those ads that you see on YouTube, the
Mhm.
creator can get a share of that. Well, because we've had so many people watching our videos, I've had a share of that money, and more.
Oh,
Sometimes I can pay a bill like the telephone bill, so 30, 40 quid. So a
no
little.
kidding.
I know, it's amazing. But this season, because so many viewers have been enjoying the content and coming back, we've managed to
Yeah.
pay. I've been because it's really slow at the moment in the shop. We're not getting many people knitting or
Right.
crafting because it's not really warm today, but it's the summer. It's not really seen as it's not like the winter when you've got wool on your lap and it's dark nights and you need to wait.
Oh,
But the
different story.
viewership from people watching the show has managed to pay half my rent this month. That's
You don't say.
nearly 300 quid. So
Wow.
so
That's
it's
seriously substantial income for you.
absolutely,
Okay.
because as I say, it gets really tight for me to pay the rent at this time of year because not many people are buying
No.
wool or cotton or anything. So viewers, thank you very much. I know many of you say
Indeed.
you wish you could contribute and help, and I know many of you are sewing and we don't do fabric anymore, and
Mhm.
so therefore you can't sort of buy into helping my bricks and mortar shop, but you are by watching and continuing to
Hmm.
come back. So all those annoying ads which you might get at the beginning of the show or every now and again dotted through the
Mhm.
show has helped to pay half the rent this month. So that's great because I've now got a
That's
bit more
amazing.
money to spend on other things in the shop or a few more bills that are coming up. So there you go,
Well,
Carol. How
and
good is that?
that's, I think that is really good. And you're good at it, you know? And you're a great ambassador for our trade.
Oh,
So yes, another have a real good string to your bow, Stuart.
Oh,
Well done.
thank you very much. Well, I enjoy it. Thank you, viewers, for continuing to come back and to engage and to keep that conversation going. So much so, I've been inspired, even though we're at week 7. Why has it taken so long to be inspired to get back into sewing? But I've started making, so we'll talk about that towards the end.
see.
But let's go into it. We're on week 7, lingerie week. So, of course, it had to be piping and boning, didn't it, Carol?
It was kind of simple. Yeah. I mean, they're a bit mysterious, both of these things.
Yeah.
You know, with the especially the piping. Now, this was flat piping. We're used to more corded piping.
Yeah.
That has a dimension to it, and you wrap your fabric around it. Well, this is just flat. It's easier in one way, but then it brings this whole new set of problems in another sense. So I've just put together a few things that we can, we can explore a little bit about what this mysterious thing is about flat piping.
Well, let's go and link this to the actual pattern challenge and bring up what the pattern was. So where are we here? Let's go to this pattern challenge here and then get the picture. So they were charged with making a pajama blouse, and it had to have the contrast flat piping. They had to make that around the collar and the cuffs and the hem. So that was the pattern there. And I've got a picture here of their sample. We've got the long shot, which with my sort of limited eyes, that seems to be hanging well. Maybe at the bottom, that bottom button looks a bit something going on there, but that might be just the way it's put on the model. But that seems to be hanging well and looking good from a distance, doesn't it?
Looking good from a distance, yes. It looks clean. I don't see a whole lot of the contrast. That's the only thing. Like a pink and a deeper pink. Well, it might be the range that we're looking at it.
I had this conversation with Ting yesterday because when we see some of the patterns that were made, I felt they were more complementary in piping rather than contrasting.
Yes. I would agree with that. Yeah. I mean, I suppose it's easier if you pick a plain fabric and then a plain piping. So you've got, but if you're picking a pattern fabric, then you're confused, or the pattern is drawing the eye away.
And there's the close-up of the collar.
Yeah. Okay.
And
there we are. So
as you can see there, that's the flat piping. Now, I have to put my hand up. I've done flat piping before without realising it, because in my quilts, when I do my binding, I'll often have a little slither of flat piping, but we kind of call it a flange. So it's just a different terminology where you just have that little bit of fabric and then your binding showing. But when I saw it, I noticed.
Is that part of the frame up of the quilt? So is it on purpose to show another texture?
It's kind of like, when you have a picture and you frame it and you have your outer border and then your little tiny inner border and then the photograph itself. It's a bit like that on quilting. And that little inner border, which is what, 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch at its most, is literally like that, a little flap. So it is going to be fiddly because there's not much fabric there, is there?
True, absolutely. And are you preparing your flat piping? Are you preparing that on the straight of the grain or the bias of the grain?
No, that's the beauty of quilting. It's always on the straight. We're just cutting straight lines off the bolt. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So it's a bit more straightforward.
Absolutely, yeah. This would scare because I could perhaps do the straight bit, but when you... I haven't fired up my thingy bob. Hang on.
Where's your magic pen?
I know. I need to quickly fire it up. See, come on, if it will load. Let's do that and press a button. Sorry, everyone. Talk amongst yourselves. Yeah, that's right. Have a, have a. There we
Have a
go.
sip.
So
Talk amongst yourself.
this bit here, is that showing? Yes. This bit
Yes.
here, the straight edge, that would be fine, but
Mhm.
this junction here would be the one that would scupper me on how it's
Yeah.
done. So, and I think
Mhm.
Tom asked that question. We'll come to that later in the questions, or we might even come back to it as we talk. But it
Mhm.
looks quite a difficult skill, Carol.
Yeah, it's about, well, knowing your seam allowance and with the collar, the upper collar, not the lapel, you can pipe the whole of the collar.
Okay.
When you get to the revere or the lapel, then you have to stop your piping where that V meets. You have to
Oh.
stop your piping and then seam up to it, right? Because you've got that extra layer that
Oh,
sticks
so
out.
you got to come
Um,
down there and stop, and then this one will go up and meet it.
yeah, the other way around.
Oh,
So
okay.
you stop on the revere, on the revere that goes up to the collar, then you have to stop. The collar itself, you can pipe the whole thing
All right. This is a
because
new
that
word for
just
me.
goes, okay.
What's revere?
The revere is the part that flaps outward, the facing from the top button all the way up to the collar.
So
That is your revere.
that
Yes,
bit.
yes.
I didn't know that.
Revere or reverse, right? It's the inside of the
Oh,
garment coming back out. So that's your lapel or
okay.
your revere.
And then this bit
Now
here is the collar.
that's the collar. Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Brilliant.
And I must admit, when I watched, because I like one of my favorite parts of the show is when they show the diagram of how what you do and in what order, and they have the little
Absolutely. Yeah, I
stitches.
love that bit.
Um, and I always think, could that be made simpler? Is that the way the directions flow as well? Is that the order that they're
It's.
told to
I
go in?
presume it is because that's how they
Yeah,
tell us, but I don't know.
yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
and in these trickier bits, they just skip over it. It's
Yeah.
like you pipe the collar, you seam it in,
Yeah.
then you do this, then you prepare your
Yeah.
facings, and then you just join them.
Yeah.
And well,
I wish it
there's
was
a
like
little bit of a trick there.
that. Okay.
If only, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so, well, let's take it away. Lead
All
on
right,
with piping. Oh, right.
okay,
Let's go to your machine.
let's go. Um,
Ooh.
okay, so here we are. I'm going to start with this blue piece because this flat piping is made on the bias,
Okay.
except if you're quilting, then it's
Yeah.
on the straight. And there's a stretch to it because we talked about the bias all the time and the property that it gives you to work with. Now, I've made a piece of piping out of crepe. It isn't the most stable because number one, it's thin. And when you stretch it, it becomes thinner. And if you ease it on, it becomes thicker. So this poses a dilemma. So the one thing you can do to make life a lot easier is you can, instead of cutting strips on the bias, you can prepare a larger piece and fuse it.
Oh.
Now, so you've got a bigger piece,
Yeah.
you know exactly where your bias lines are, and then you can chalk them out or you draw your lines using your pattern master or
Yeah.
whatever. And then when you cut, you don't have a pattern piece lying on top. You have the stability underneath.
Brilliant.
Okay. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. Then, so I've got two of these, which I've cut, and then I've seamed them together. Now, when you seam bias together, you have your two bias pieces, and then you sew at what is a 45-degree angle. But that 45-degree angle to the bias is actually the straight of the grain.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this will not stretch, and you can see you can pull threads out.
Yeah.
These are all parallel to the straight, you see. So that's what you're doing. And then you would fold your piping in half and then prepare that. Now, if you're making piping yourself, you want to know a couple of things. You want to know, first of all, what is your seam allowance going to be? How are you going to apply it?
Oh, just move your hands down a tad more, Carol. That's it.
Oh,
Perfect.
sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. I was moving the camera, but I couldn't move it anymore.
Oh, you were chasing my hands,
Yeah.
but you weren't finding them.
That's all right.
Okay, so there's that. So you want to know what seam allowance you're going to use to seam in this piping. Here's your folded edge here.
Yeah.
The edge that's going to show. So if you're making it yourself, you need a seam allowance, then the amount you want to show.
Yeah.
And then you want that again, because this is on the fold. So seam, the showy part, then the showy part doubled, and then another seam.
Get you. Absolutely.
Okay. So, and then you fold it in half, and then you can start preparing your binding, which is exactly what I've done here. Here's my seam on the 45. You can see these little triangles sticking out.
Yeah.
And then what I've done is I've just sewed it together, and then I remeasured everything. Now, why would you do that? Why would you do that? So we're finished with this piece now, because I've shown you the benefits of fusing first.
Yeah.
So we'll get rid of that. And I just want to show, there's another sample here. Now, I prepared my binding with no interfacing.
Okay.
And then I seamed it on. Now here I'm using a 1/2 inch seam allowance.
Yeah.
So I seamed it on, and then using my pattern master, which I'll go and grab. Here it is. I'm checking my work to see how accurate it is. Doing flat piping is all about being absolutely exact.
Yeah.
So here is my seam allowance here. And when I then applied this tool to check, because this is the bit that shows on the garment, okay? When you turn it out, that's the bit that shows.
Oh, right.
Okay?
Yeah, I get you.
So you want this stripe to be absolutely perfectly even.
Yeah.
So what I did is I laid the pattern master at 1/4 inch, and then I drew another line, and that line did not match my seam line. So I did this, I drew a nice line, and then I looked at it, and I don't know if you can see.
Oh, I can. You've got 2 lines there. Look at that.
2 lines there.
Yeah.
So, and if I don't correct this, if I don't take it back to the machine and catch that, then when I turn this out,
you can have,
it's going to be slightly wider down here than it is here.
And that's exactly what many of the sewers had issues with, wasn't it?
Precisely right. Okay, now let's talk about piping a curve. You've got inside curves and outside curves. This is kind of like a very long exaggeration of the lapel or the revers.
Yeah.
Of the thing. Now, I'm using crepe because it's nice and sticky. It doesn't float around. It's not slippery. So it's nice to show this example. So you're lining it up, and you're following along the outside of that curve. And I don't know if you can see, but you get these little hills.
Absolutely. You've got, more fabric concentrating together, haven't you?
Yeah. Now this is important, because when you seam this, let's say we're going to seam it at about 1/4 inch. Everyone see that?
Yeah.
When you turn this out, okay, your curve is actually a little bit bigger than this curve.
Of course.
Because it extends outward.
Yeah.
So when you're lining it up, these little hills that you see, these are very important, and you mustn't stretch. You leave them, and then you can, with your pins, you can walk this around, keep it flat on the edge, but make
keep your
sure
hill.
that those little hills, you have to keep them, because when you turn it outside, you want this edge to be bigger than this edge.
Yes,
so that makes sense.
It's a wider circumference. It's a wider arch. It's got further to travel, hasn't it?
That's right. Absolutely. So this is an outside curve. Let's do the same thing with an inside curve. So I'm going to go like this with the binding. Okay. Now with this one, can you picture if we were to bind an entire circle?
Yeah.
What? Can you picture that?
I could draw that.
So we would be setting, and there were some 60s designers that did beautiful things and their pockets were circles. Now you've got the opposite problem on an inside curve.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to introduce a wider circumference into what is going to be a smaller hole.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I hope this is clear.
Yeah.
Because on an inside curve, when you're setting this up and you get those little hills, those are bad on an inside curve.
You got to get rid of the hills then.
Yeah, you got to get rid of the hills by then just giving it a little bit of a stretch.
Oh.
And then you test it. So everything is now flat. The little hills are gone. And this works really well in the crepe.
Oh, this is where your fabric choice is going to play a huge part.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and then when you turn it back in, so you might want to practice with some tension, controlling it a little bit.
I can see how already that looks smooth and stretched out.
Yes. And that way, then I'll get a couple more pins here. Just a little bit of a stretch. And then you might want to then adjust, because when you're stretching, you're narrowing, aren't you?
Of course.
So if you wanted 1/4 of an inch of piping showing, you might have to add on 1 millimeter or so that when you turn it in, okay, so there we are. And now when that gets all pressed and turned in, that's going to be no hills. That's going to be really nice and flat. The other thing I wanted to show you finally is when you prepare a seam. Now this is not on a curve. This is just on the straight. So there's my seam. The piping is on the inside.
Yeah.
I've actually gone and done 2 passes on this as well to make sure it was even.
Cool. Yeah.
And then what I did, because it's going to show like this when we're all finished.
Yeah.
But the best thing you can do is to get an iron in there.
Yeah.
And to press this seam as flat as you can. Even if you're on a curve, you can use your sleeve board or your clapper, or even a rolled up magazine with some calico over it, anything, or a small pressing tool. Because if you can get that pressed and then turn it back on itself, and then you can see how accurate you are.
Yeah.
So that when then you press it back, you know that you've got an even bit of piping.
And
okay.
I'm always amazed when I press my seams and even with my fingers, and I think it's flat, and I'll have another look just to check, and I'm like, oh my word, there's still a little bit of fabric there that I could just push out a bit more and make it flatter.
Absolutely, yeah. And the one way to make sure of that is to go into the origin of the seam. Yeah. And you've got to get it right. You're not doing the one that you've put the piping on first. You're doing the last thing that you sewed.
Yeah.
Is the first seam that you're going to press. So that's basically it. And if you can, if you can do the get some fusing underneath, you can get very lightweight interfacings, almost like a fusible tricot. So it doesn't need to change the color of anything, but it gives you so much more control. And then when you're measuring the width, let me just get this again. That's when you're measuring the width of your piping.
It's going to be a bit more consistent.
It's going to be really clean.
Yeah.
And that is really the most important thing about piping, is getting it just clean and perfectly parallel, and then understanding what seam allowance you want. I don't know what they would have used on the pattern challenge. I would have thought they would have done 1/4 of an inch seam, something that they don't have to then trim.
Yeah.
You know, because if it was a centimeter seam, then the piping has to be bigger, and it's a lot harder to manipulate and to turn out. You know, because when you're turning your lapel out, then it's yeah, there's too much seam allowance on the inside.
You've got that baggage inside. Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So a little bit about flat piping.
Oh, that was brilliant. Yes. And actually, I think we've got some questions from Tom. I'm actually just going to jump to that, Carol, because I think that might have covered it. So let me just quickly go to the questions part. Tom said in the pattern challenge, the example garment had piping that met up in the collar notch, but some of the contestants had a piping gap. What's the technique for making it meet up? Well, I think you kind of answered that when we were talking about the revere. That was that part. If we, I might have some pictures.
You follow the direction. You follow the directions according to the make that they, that they're intending for you.
Let's see if I've got some pictures. So let's go to the sample again.
Now Alex has two.
So Tom was talking about that junction there, wasn't it? Meeting up. Now, if we go and let's look at the contestants, how they dealt with that. Let's look at Alex there. Yeah, it's
yes. Okay, so on the, as we're looking at the screen, the right side of her lapel, she stretched the piping.
That bit.
On the right side. Yeah, just go down to the revere now.
Oh, yeah.
Down to the revere. Oh, the lapel. Yes, she stretched that. And then it looks like there's two completely different curves. This is not a symmetrical lapel.
Yeah.
That the curve is not as sharp. So she might have cut her piping and she might have run out of piping. That's possible. So I suppose that's another thing to take into consideration. Cut more piping than you need.
Yeah.
Because imagine if you run out. Now, I can't see what's going on in that junction.
Can you see it? Let me see if I can make it bigger.
So that one looks okay. So that looks like she might have folded. Maybe the directions tell you to sew to the dot, the seam allowance dot, and then turn your piping in 90 degrees so that it's in the seam.
That bit there?
Yes, right, exactly. They might stop and just fold it into the seam allowance.
Oh, I don't know whether I like the sound of that though.
Well,
or the
you
look.
have to get rid of it somehow, and you can't. You have to get rid of it before you get to the seam of the collar.
The collar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you can't, or then you see if you were to follow the piping on the revere all the way up through the collar.
It should go to there, shouldn't it?
On that seam line.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to stop there. There's no provision to pipe the what you call the gorge line, which is where the collar and the revere meet. Yeah, so there's that little bit. If you follow how the revere folds over,
right.
Get your pen there and just go up the center front of the piece.
Yeah.
Up the center front where it's folding.
Yeah.
Where's your pencil?
There.
Yeah, now keep going. Just keep going along the seam till you get to the mannequin.
Yeah.
That's your gorge line. That's your, okay. That's where the collar meets the lapel.
Yeah.
Okay. Now there's no way, I mean, you could pipe that seam.
I would like to have done that in my head. Yeah.
There you go. Yes. But because the directions say you're not going to make the gorge line decorative with piping, you have to stop the piping.
Right.
And you can't just cut it. You don't want a raw edge there.
No.
So one way to get rid of it is to just fold it in.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
So that's kind of what Tom was saying then, wasn't it? If I go back to the questions, how do you deal with that meeting up? See, in my head, I thought you would have had, but then you'd had double layer fabric. You would have had that carrying on underneath, and then you would have had this one going over the top. But then it would be thick, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would be thick. So it's, I mean, really, you can do whatever you'd like. You can decorate the whole of the gorge line. You can have the piping disappear. That would be very tricky to do. It generally you just have to create a finished edge on one of those.
Well, I'm going to go on.
It's easier to sink the collar into the facing because that's how it works best. That's
I'm just
the
going
most
to have
efficient way to do it.
Another closer look at the sample and just see, because that looked, I couldn't see it sinking away. It looked like I'm looking at this side.
Yes.
It looks to me that this one is going up, and then this one comes over the top, and it lays like that to me. But
yes.
Can you see that?
Yeah, I can. But it's going over the top of a piece of piping. So what happens to that piece of piping? What happens to it? Where does it go? How is it finished?
Yeah.
Okay. It's difficult to see how that's finished.
So you can see how the sewers actually struggled. If we have a look at Luke's there, that's a very good sample. Actually, you can. I think you can see clearly on the right one. It's gone right in there, hasn't it?
Yes. So it looks like there's a bit of a gap. The collar is completely piped. That's fine.
Yeah.
There's no problem. And that gets seamed into the facing.
Yeah.
So the collar is completely finished with piping. It's the lapel that we're not sure. And if you look at the other side, not where Espe's
I think you're right.
You can see that it tapers off, that the piping gets narrower.
Yeah, they've tucked it in, haven't they? That's how they do it.
It's going somewhere. And I just would need to see the directions to. And you see, we were talking about testing the width of your piping. So on the collar, the piping is thicker, it's wider than it is on the lapel.
Absolutely.
The lapel is, it's narrower.
And
those are on an outside curve, that's the tricky bit.
Yeah. And when you're on a sewing competition, you're sewing in 3 hours. That's one thing that's going to go out of the window, isn't it? So to get this lapel on, this piping on full stop, is actually quite a feat, isn't it?
This is a really tricky task. And never mind the buttons and the buttonholes and having to press it and having to have the hem even, and then. You've got to do your sleeves as well. Oh, those have to be piped and the cuff put on. But these are all big asks, and this is a very, very tricky technical maneuver to make.
This is a real technical skill. Yeah. Let's have a look at Pasha's close up. If I've got a close up of that one, Pasha. There's Pasha's close up. Yes, and that's a clear example. So that you're right. The collar is all piped.
All done.
Yeah.
And she's ended up with quite a narrow piping, it looks like. Yeah.
Yes,
Her
yeah.
piping is.
It will be interesting to see what their pattern had said, whether it said your piping must be 1/4 inch or whether it's just piped and it's up to the
Yeah.
sewer to choose.
Yes. I would like to see the directions for this.
Yeah.
And also, how effective do you think that is as a contrast?
Well, this is it, and this is where you know, we're being really nitpicky, I know, but they did say, and they have to make their own contrast piping, and that's not contrast, that's complementary, isn't it?
Complementary.
It's
Yes,
pink,
I think
pink
so.
and green, and she's gone with the pink.
Yeah.
But would you? But then I'm thinking, well, would you use a contrast if you've chosen that fabric? What would the contrast be?
Yeah, that's the
It's
tricky bit, you know.
yellow
If you're
or
dealing with,
blue, or it's
yeah,
like
got plain
you're adding another
fabric.
color.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Unless you chose a very deep green,
Yes,
maybe,
yeah,
or
but
a very, very dark pink.
it just wouldn't look as nice.
Stay
So I
in the
think
family.
complementary is a better one for
Yeah.
than contrast. Or they should have just left it free. You choose your piping color.
Yeah, because the technical challenge is enough.
Absolutely, yeah.
We don't need another color restriction thrown in.
Let's have a look at Susie's collar there.
Okay.
Yeah, and we can see that clearly now, can't we? Certainly on that.
That's it.
Yeah.
And yes, and it looks like, yeah, see, yeah, we can see that the ratio of piping to the pattern piece is not, it's not right. Something's fighting.
Yeah.
Okay,
Wonderful. Well, they are, Tom. That aren't. Let's go back to your question. I know we've gone out of sync there, but there we are. That is, we've sort of covered that. How is it met up in that gorge line, that junction there?
Yes.
And what was Tom's other question? Actually, I think there was another one. I'd like to hear something about piping around curves, please. How do you deal with the change in tightness when you turn piping through to the other side of a curve? Well, there you are.
There we are. We've talked about inside and outside curves. And with an outside curve, you have to really ease on. It's important because you're piping into a larger curve. And the reverse is true on an inside curve.
They are, Tom. Let us know if that was of any use. And if you do some piping, let us know. Give us a picture. Email us a picture. We'd love to see what you create. Oh, wonderful. Okay. Well, let's just have a look at, now we've looked at the skill, let's look at the overall ones of the pattern challenge. And where's the group shot? Considering we've had many unfinished garments and we've been we've been feeling a bit like this all season, haven't we? Feeling for the sewers, and you know that the time has stopped them from creating something, and they were being judged on, oh, you didn't finish this, and if only you had more time. We actually got something really good and saw some sewing and felt like, oh, right, this is interesting for the challenge. So it's nice to see them like that now, isn't it?
Yes, we're seeing more finished garments, but we're also seeing the struggle that they have.
Yeah.
And I think that still the time is still a factor. How long did they have to do this?
They had 4 hours, but they had a little bit extra. They had 15 minutes extra. So they had 4 hours and 15 minutes.
Oh, it's still a lot to do. Oh.
It is a lot, isn't it? It is a lot. So,
but I take your point that we're seeing things at more an advanced completion, and they're looking tidy.
Yes.
And so, and now we've got six sewers left. We're going to have 5, aren't we?
We will next week, because it will be the quarterfinals. So it's taken some time to where we can start seeing the sewers actually make something, and for us to go, oh, that was brilliant. That's brilliant. I've missed that. Where and that's where you get your attachment to your sewer, isn't it? That's where you come back a week in to watch it.
Yes, and I feel that the comedy element is they're getting to know the sewers and we're not.
Yes.
You know, they're having their fun and their jokes and
Yeah.
everything, but we're, and I think it's whenever they show, yeah, that interaction, you just think, but they only have 5 minutes, leave them alone.
That's right.
Shut up.
I think I'd be miserable. I'd be like, go away, Kyle, don't talk to me now, I'm busy. And of course,
Exactly.
they won't want that from the sewers, will they? So it's. I think you'd have to, if you were on there, you'd have to weigh that up. How much do you get involved? Do you just go, just have some fun? To hell with the sewing.
But it's a lot to put into one show, isn't it? The judges walking around, all the stuff that has to be done, and then to introduce that other kind of, oh, this is all just for fun. We're going to try to help you relax while taking up your time, which you don't have enough of.
Let's have a look at Alex, because she won that round. So let's just have a look at hers close up, which is from a general shot there. You can see it on the piping on the cuffs. The hem looks level, because I know that was something that some sewers struggled with. One, because of the buttons, it took the front left and front right out of sync. But from that shot, it looks like a lovely pajama blouse.
Very nice. And I like her choice of fabric too, the jacquard, and then with a solid color piping.
And let's have a close look.
Yep.
You can understand why. I know we can see some inconsistencies there, but compared to everyone else, collar sits lovely.
It's interesting because that fabric does take over, so you don't really see the minor things that have gone wrong, because the fabric is so dazzling,
isn't it? And it'll shimmer in different lights. Oh, brilliant.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go on to then boning. Now, I know we've talked about this over the years, so I shall put some links down below, because I think we did it a couple of series ago. And we also, Carol and I went to, the name escapes me, Wallace. Ooh, what's the name? The haberdashery.
McCulloch and Wallace. Yeah. McCulloch and Wallace.
Oh, that's it.
All
yes.
the trimmings, all the haberdashery you can imagine. Yes,
and we looked
everything.
At the boning department. So you take a look at that video. I'll put that in the link below. It's in London, a fabulous haberdashery where Carol goes and gets all her materials from. So we have talked about piping before. Boning before. So what are you going to talk to us about today then, from a boning point of view, Carol?
Well, I think just a few things to mention.
Okay.
And that is the different types of boning that you can get. So I think I didn't see anybody using spiral boning. I saw the Rigeline. So here it's in black and white.
Okay.
And I saw them using these underwire cups, which they do help. They keep the the bit here. Now this is a different pattern, but this is like half of a bra cup.
Come
here.
down a bit. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. There we are. And so this metal bit would fit in there, but of course the seam line doesn't match the shape of this. But that's where that would be seamed into.
Oh, okay.
And then your boning goes into the seams that you need to be tall. So it's generally the underarm, the center back, the center front up to a point. And this is Catile, which I use. It's a herringbone, really strong. And the only thing I really wanted to point out is when you're putting boning into a seam, you sew your casing.
Okay.
This is a seam allowance. It's about 5/8 of an inch here.
Yeah.
And then you sew another sandwich, line of stitching that the bone is going to go into. So this one is quite tight.
Oh, I see.
So there it is coming out. And the only thing I really wanted to say is you have to check. You have to sew down where your seam allowance is going to be. Let's say you're attaching the bodice to a skirt and you have a seam allowance here. You want to size this up so that there's a little bit of room for
More.
the bodice to bend over the skirt, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to change it. You don't want to force this down and change the shape of anything. And then before you sew the top off, the top of your seam off, make sure that you can fold this all over and finish your garment nicely, again, without anything poking out. And these two seams, the long seam that is boned, there's a little bit of breathing room.
Yeah.
For your in the casing.
So leave a generous seam on the top as well, then, so you get that neat, tidy finish.
Yeah. And make sure that whatever seam allowance you're allowing your pattern, that make sure you can actually finish the garment just with your hands, as it were. So tuck the seam allowance in, put your lining on, maybe put some basting stitches together, and see if you can finish it without putting this through the machine. And then prove that it doesn't conflict, that the boning isn't taller than your finished piece.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah? And then with your spiral boning, you get these end caps, which keeps everything nice.
I remember
and
these. We talked about this. Yeah. Well, it feels like last year, but it might have been 2 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and with the Ridgeline, you normally cut that. You cut that to size, say, but Ridgeline boning is made up of a series of parallel, very stiff and not very brittle, but very stiff and sharp edges.
Okay.
So when you cut your thing to shape, you can take just a lighter or a match, heat that up, and then
almost melt it down.
Melt it down, yeah, and then they're not going to separate any of these and end up poking, the wearer in an uncomfortable way. So that's that, and so yes, bridal season is just about over. I'm happy about that. Oh, and here's a little piece I'd made a long time ago, and it just shows you how you can use. This is made of power net. We talked about that. It's very stretchy.
Look at that.
And I've controlled it with some grosgrain ribbon. And this is just an under the bust bustier. So there's a separating zip here, hook and bar up at the top.
Yeah.
And then here we are. This fits right under the bust. You can see the shape of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so here in the center front, we have three bones tall here, and then one just under the bust.
Okay, now those 3 bones in the middle, how much of that is engineering and how much of that is artistic look?
Well, it's all engineering.
Okay.
And it's also, you don't just have this one that maybe then would, I don't know, poke out a little bit. It's controlled then on either side. Oh. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is stretch elastic, and I'm using a stretch stitch on a domestic machine to install this. And this was just a sample garment. So there we are. And I think I planned to put 2 bonings in on either side of the zip, but I in the end I didn't for some reason.
So you've only got one
again,
each side.
Here you can see, here you can see I left some space. So this bone it's free to move inside the casing. It has some, some vertical movement.
So
that it's not.
Where's my thingy gone?
Yeah.
I've lost my picture. I was going to draw. Can I draw? So this is my boning, and my channel. To leave it a bit of space, you've sewn it down one side, And then you said you did an extra one the opposite side. So you like that, are you?
That's right. That's right. Yes. Now, one of the channels can be your seam line. So in this piece here, this first one is just the regular old seam. I'm joining, say, the front to the side front.
Okay.
And that's my seam allowance. That's my normal seam allowance.
Yeah. And then
I measure, you know, how much of a casing I need. And then I apply that second line of stitching.
Okay.
And if you want some security in this garment, you could have a much wider seam allowance. You could have an inch seam allowance with a small casing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
It's quite tight here because I only have, you know.
I guess so that's you're not much there for your needle to go through to do that second channel, is it?
That's right.
Yeah.
And then of course, you would use to sew this, you would use your zipper foot, wouldn't you?
Come down a bit. Oh, there you go. There it is. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. You could actually lay the bone in. You could lay that in.
I could see.
And then you could put a few basting stitches in.
Yeah.
And then if you wanted to, you could use that, or just sew your casing and then put the boning in.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just showing you that because it could be that you're adding something in. You've got a dress or a garment and you just want to, you know, you're not sure that you have enough room. The other thing you can do is you can pipe this seam so that, you know, we're talking about piping. So when you're sewing it, you could be adding on another fabric that just helps strengthen it. And then when you wrap that around. Okay. So and then this is where you can make this an outside feature. So we had one of the contestants actually showed that she wanted all her the mechanics.
She did, Alex. She wanted it on show. Yeah.
So you could do that. You could use that and then pipe the outside.
And really make it a feature.
Yeah, why not? Yeah. So we might get into a little bit of corsetry in the masterclass. Let's see how that goes. Yeah.
We're going to talk about that in a minute. So don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. That was wonderful. Let's go and look at the made to measures where the boning came in, because that was, let's take a look. They had to make a bustier dress with bust cups and boning. So they had to use it. It was it's part of a bustier dress, I presume, boning. It's got to be there, yes? Is that right?
Yes, because it's strapless or not, but it's very fitted on the top, and this is to accentuate the bust line. So it's going to be fitting very close to the body.
Okay.
And the cups have to be very accurate. I mean, you could say something about symmetry in the body now, and that is that there is none. So this is particularly difficult because a woman's figure is not going to be even. So that's one of the challenges. But so you want the bodice to stand tall, not collapse.
Well, now you've just hit the nail on the head, actually, with which was some of the issues. They were lovely, but many of the sewers had issues. They stood tall, but they also stood away from the bust.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you'll talk to us about why that is when we get to the pictures. Let's go for it. Let's no particular order. We'll go through all six because there's only six. Let's go through Ailsa's. That's the long shot, and then the close up of the top.
And I like this piece.
Yeah, it fitted well. Yeah. It didn't come away from the bust at the top, did it? I know she had some issues with the straps.
It's sitting very well, and I like the very modern, almost, this is shapewear, worn over a dress, or the old, a nod to the old bodysuits. I thought this is a lovely design. And then she's kept that central panel, ruched in, that follows down from that.
It does, doesn't it?
Very nice.
it's like
Yeah,
that, isn't it? That was
really
Alex.
clever. Mm.
Elsa, sorry. She has
Elsa,
shown
sorry.
over the last couple of weeks a lot of creativity, hasn't she? With the
Mm.
wonderful
Yes.
sari with the tartan and the layered fabric. There is certainly a creative engineering approach from Elsa, isn't there?
I like her imagination
Mm,
and how she thinks, she does a deeper dive into, how you can make things interesting. And I really like her work.
absolutely. Starting to, we're starting to get our favourites now, aren't we? We like, well, I want to see more of them. I want to see more of them. Alex, long shot there, and then close up. And Alex was the one that said she wanted to, right from the beginning, her concept was to show show the making, the structure, the architecture of it.
Yes, this I think is a real success. Um, I think it fits her model well. I think it's alluring, which is part of this brief.
Yeah,
And I like the way she, used rickrack to um, lock in the channels
yeah,
for the boning.
yeah,
I really like the way she set her skirt in because I like the ratio of gathers to waist,
yeah.
and I like how she has the seam on the outside.
It's clever, isn't it?
Um,
And
I really like this piece a
yeah,
lot, and I liked how the netting was a lot longer. I didn't have any problem with that. I think she got called. There was a criticism about
too
the
long.
netting being too long, and I didn't see that. I thought it was part of just the mysteriousness of the garment because the bodice was sheer, and
Yeah.
then from the hemline of the polka dot to the floor that was sheer, and I thought it just showed good balance.
And
Mm.
let's move on to Luke. The long shot
Ah,
there.
yes.
And this is
Yeah.
where we start to come to some of the sewers where the top part is coming away. Uh, this
Mm.
was, it looks complicated anyway because he was having to pleat
Yeah.
those cups.
Yes. Yeah. It's very pretty. The concept is really pretty, but it is coming away. So the cup size is too large for the model. Yeah.
So that
Yeah, and then
if
doesn't.
we're thinking about that, because it's made to measure, how would that have come up on a fitting, on the earlier fitting? Would he have noticed that, or would there have been no way of doing that because of the intimacy of the cups of measuring a lady's bosom? I don't
Yeah,
know.
because true enough, I seem to remember. I remember that they were trying these on over models that had a t-shirt on or
Oh, could have done. Yes,
a, a
for
turtleneck and maybe a bra as
yeah.
well. And then when they wore the dress, everything came off.
Ah,
So that tolerance was in the
yeah,
way.
yeah. Very good point, Carol. Very good point.
Oh, mm.
For keeping modesty, of course. Let's have a look at Marcus. I have to say, I really like Marcus's. I love the concept of it.
Yeah.
That's the long shot, but again, he had issues with it. It's hard to see there, but it was coming away. You could put your fingers down. It wasn't laying flat. I
Oh, so
don't
you mean
think.
that the bodice was far away from the body?
I think so. Certainly, this
Yeah.
at the top bit. I think it
Yes.
when the
Yeah.
model was side on. I think you could see it was coming away.
Hmm. And there's a way to work around that. You can put some kind of a gathering line over the top of the cup. Maybe put a set of smaller darts in to bring it
Oh,
back
okay.
onto the body. There's a lot you can do, and if you don't catch it, then uh, you still have time, and it can be part of your design if you see. But if it's that far off the body,
Yeah,
it's not going to be comfortable. You're going to be self-conscious wearing it.
yeah.
And there are things you can do
Okay.
to bring that cup closer to the body.
And 2 left to go. We've got Pasha, long shot, and then get ready for the, oh, look at that.
Yeah. Nicely decorated, really nice. Good use of lace. Yeah, she's done a really lovely job. And of course, it fits. It looks like the cups are a little too tall and they're starting to collapse down.
Is that the little bit of wrinkles there? Is that what?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
But I'm just thinking that the complexity of, you've got the fabric, the beige fabric, and then you've got the netting over the top. That netting looks like it's sitting perfectly in all places. There's no extra ruffles. There's no tightness. That's some skill there, isn't it?
Yes, and because there's a lot of seams, so she would have seamed the netting in that seam over the bust. She would have seamed the netting and her backing fabric together. Then it's all secured when she sews in the underwire.
Right.
She's got some seams either side of the center front and more seams. So there's a lot of secure things going on. And if you line everything up and pin it correctly, and it's a dream, isn't it?
Isn't it? Yeah. And
real dreamy garment.
It won garment of the week, and you can understand that. It just works, doesn't it?
Oh yes. Yeah.
And lastly, Susie. There we go.
Yeah, I remember this one. Oh yes, she was working on the 4-color map theorem, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Where no color touches another color. Every time you have a junction, you have a different color.
It really appealed to me, my patchwork side of me. I just really enjoyed that, the geometry of it, the modern color. You know, the pink and the red. I can remember late Queen Elizabeth, Queen II. She had that red and pink dress. Can you remember that?
I can't remember it, but they work so well together.
Absolutely.
Don't they?
You wouldn't think they would, but they do, don't they?
Yeah, yeah. You can see on the left side, as we're looking at the screen, the bones are a little bit too long. They're poking into the waistline.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, a little bit too long. But it fits.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it made to measure, and she has a quirky set of plans sometimes, doesn't she?
Yeah. But that's when you think about the show. That's ultimately why we like watching, and you connect with those sewers, or some don't. But it's what makes us love the sewing bee, and we're now starting to really get that, which is wonderful. It feels about 3 or 4 episodes too late, because we're at the quarterfinals all of a sudden.
Yeah, and you know, just a word about that last challenge, because I thought, you know, why we've got so many men in the show now?
Yeah.
Why are we doing women's garments? You know, when it comes to sewing something that we have to incorporate. You know, boning and piping, and we're sewing in very small pieces, and we're doing something that embellishes, you know, sort of intimate areas, and you know, why is it that we always end up with a female garment? So I did just some reminiscing back to my costume days at the Royal Opera.
Oh wow!
And I remember having to make. Yes, a very interesting male garment. So it's not bustward, but it's crotchward.
You didn't do like a Shakespearean codpiece, did you?
I did. So.
Oh, watch out, everyone! Are we going to see it? Are you getting it?
Look, I'm going to show you now because I have it on a stand, which I'm doing a bridal piece, so it's a dress and jacket, but I just thought I'd have a fitting with it today. So are you guys ready?
Very ready, yeah. Look at that. Oh my word. That is brilliant.
I mean, we could have done something like that instead of a bustier, couldn't we?
Of course. It's just...
Okay, and I think maybe we should think in that direction, you know. It doesn't always have to be a feminine thing. But I think the reason I did this, Stuart, is because I thought you and some people in your circle do pantomime.
Absolutely. It just reminds me of that
So,
completely. Yeah.
so I'm going to put this in the post. It's yours for the pantomime,
Oh,
but it has it's really worked out with the piping, here, and then there's a
look.
casing here, so there's a spiral boning in there, and then in the back you can't see it, but there's a spiral boning here.
You can
here,
just
and
slightly
here.
see the
So
shadow.
that you could,
Well,
yeah,
viewers
and
see,
then it's insane,
isn't
isn't it?
it?
But
If
hey,
and what a
it's
treat if you're still watching, because I know we've gone on for an hour already. There you are. That's a treat for you, for the ones that
yeah.
are with us
Yeah, it's
all
a
the
bit.
way.
We're talking about Susie and her quirky ideas. Well,
Oh, brilliant. Right. Well, you've shown me
okay.
yours. I'm going to show you mine. So, you know, I've made this shirt many times. It's a lovely
Yeah.
pattern. It's a Canadian company called Thread Theory, and they do some fabulous
Right.
men's patterns. And it's called the Fairfield shirt. And I've done loads of them over the last 2 years with Carol's help. And I thought, I want to make another one. I've got my Sew Mojo back. I don't have any calico to make a toile, but I do have some gingham. And I thought, well, let's use the gingham because it's 1/4 inch gingham. All my seam lines are going to be perfect because I can just use my squares, can't I, Carol?
There you go.
Now,
Yep.
the only issue
So
is
that's your toile, is it?
that's
This
going to
is
be
your
my toile.
behind you. Okay.
Now, the only issue is, and I need your help, and I think the viewers might appreciate watching this as well. I am going to the gym, so I've kind of got bigger traps, a bigger neck, and bigger biceps. So I've got issues already with, and I'll try and put it on. I know I've got some layers on here, so that might not show properly.
Yeah.
So I need your advice, Carol, on how I cut, because obviously I need to cut this and then transfer it back to my pattern so I can cut my pattern piece out properly. But I think this hole is going to be too tight and it's strangling me. So
so you probably need a bigger size all around.
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
Can I just take a little moment to show you my yoke?
Of course. Oh, you've on a bias, the yoke on the that
course.
looks really nice.
Right. So obviously I've not sewn my side seams up yet, so I'm just going to put it round.
And does that have a normal stand and a shirt collar?
Yes, a
with
normal
stand?
collar shirt
2 pieces.
stand.
Okay.
So where is it?
Okay.
Oh,
There
that's
you
my
are.
headphones. Just pull that out. Hang on. So you can kind of see already.
Yeah.
My neck is.
Yeah. Okay. So what size pattern do you have? What size pattern is the one that you're using?
I don't
Because
know.
you might want to go
Go up.
a size up, or we could amend your pattern.
Well, that's kind of what I wanted to do, rather than.
Okay.
So here, can you see? That's never going to go under. That's going to be a really tight armhole. I won't be able to move or anything, will I?
No.
So do I just? This is where I need someone to draw on me. But do I just cut? It's hard to do it back to front. Do I just cut a bigger, shallower armhole?
I think what I'd like you to do is to sew your side seams up at 1/4 inch.
Okay. Yeah.
And then we do a FaceTime and you'll put the shirt on without anything underneath.
Oh, I see.
And then I'll look at it and see if that size is worth, I mean, we really do need to, what they call grade each pattern piece up another size.
Oh, okay.
So, and it's all about balance. So what you're doing, you're causing something and it affects something else. So, and everything has to remain in balance. Okay.
Yes,
So the first
because
thing you probably need a lower depth of
I
sigh, which
I
is
think so. Yeah, because
yeah,
it could.
mm,
I mean,
yeah,
yeah. Look, my
yeah,
armpit is sort of here, and that's now finishing there because my biceps got bigger.
yeah. So you might need a whole new pattern altogether, Stuart, and
Oh,
you
okay.
might want to, yeah, just get a larger size pattern and then twirl that up.
Could
You can
that be as
still,
simple as? Hang on, let's just take this off.
mm,
Uh, I try to be quite clever like you. You know, you have your pattern pieces on cardboard.
oh yeah.
Well, I cut my pattern piece out onto Vilene. So,
Why not?
yeah.
Why not? Yeah, nice and strong.
So
Okay.
my armpit there, I,
Mhm.
I don't just cut more to make it bigger, do I? It's not that simple, is it?
Well, you can lower the just the curve starting like there. Yeah. Don't do the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
How is the shoulder fitting? How's
The
the
shoulder
shoulder
fitted quite well actually, because
Okay.
that kind of is the length of my shoulder, isn't it?
Yeah, okay. So that looks good. So yes, you can just drop that curve.
That
You
bit.
can drop that about a half an inch.
Okay.
And then you're going to need to add that half inch back onto your sleeve because your sleeve now needs to fit into a larger circumference. So I can show you how to do all that.
Okay, I'm coming down.
But it's just what you do affects something else.
Yeah.
So it's all about cause and effect with grading and amending. Now your shirt collar, you could, it depends, you could drop it if you, depending on the height of your neck, and then you'd have to make the stand and the collar wider
Okay.
to accommodate, maybe you're just carving out an eighth of an inch of that top neckline. You're just dropping it about an eighth. That gives you, because it's on a curve, that gives you a bigger curve, and then you would add that back on. But it takes a bit of fiddling, a bit of trial and error.
And it's not till you do it that you then have that respect for designers, because they've made this over and over again to then write it up as a pattern, and also the respect of the sewers. Because I'm just tootling away last night over a couple of hours. I'll just do this. I'll do this. I'll go to the sewing. I'll go to the ironing station, and they're doing all that in 3 hours. So it's a nice little nod to remind us, isn't it? It's easy for us to criticise from our armchair. But it's when you start doing it, you go, oh, yes, it is hard.
Yes.
The maths involved and everything else involved. But we love it,
tricky technique. Yeah, we do. And I think the only thing we're frustrated about is we just want to see them have a bit more time.
Yeah. Because
and of course
ultimately,
we don't know.
With the teacher in us, we want to see them create and succeed and make lovely things, because we can then go, ooh, and love them for it.
Yeah, and we want to see that they end up with a garment that's useful.
Yeah.
That they can wear, and enjoy. As I made this on a sewing bee.
Absolutely.
I've got to unpick the whole thing because nothing was right and nothing was even. So that's what's frustrating,
Right.
to most.
Thank you for that.
Really.
I'll come down and we'll have a sewing afternoon. Right, masterclass, everybody. Are you ready? Get your pens and paper out to write down the following address. If you are interested in taking part in a masterclass with Carol Alayne, then all you have to do is register your interest by emailing Carol. Carol and Mike, I think it might, well, it goes through to both of you, but you all work together, don't you?
Yes.
It's the email address there, Carol's website. If you've never been, take a little look around. It's a lovely little website, but it's that. I never learned to sew. All one long spiel, ineverlearntosew.com. Okay, send her an email, masterclass@ineverlearntosew.com. And they're just basically saying, I'm interested. Is that right, Carol?
That's it. Yes. And if there's anything particularly that you'd like to be covered in the masterclass, mention that as well, because I'm putting the curriculum together now, and I definitely want to cover things that people really want to learn about. So that will be helpful. And we'll start putting the database together, and then we'll be in touch with you again to tell you about the technical side of things and other things that you're just going to need to know, and to welcome you on board, basically.
Oh, wonderful. And if you did it last year, the pilot ones, you'll know what it's like, whether you're a participant or what's the other word? You're either a participant or is it a viewer? A
stitcher or a stitcher or a viewer.
A viewer, that's it. Yeah.
Yes.
And I know we're looking at how it's run, and maybe just reflecting on how we did it last year, and seeing that. So compiling everything together, and again, it might differ on the response of you all as well, on what you want to do. I know some people didn't. They wanted to just be a viewer, didn't they? They weren't. They were happy just
That's
watching.
right,
They didn't want to be a stitcher and a participant at all, did they?
Yeah, it's lovely to have both.
Yeah.
We really appreciate the people that want to be a stitcher, because this is live.
Yeah.
That's why Masterclass is so special. It's happening live, and we're answering questions, and we're looking at work, and we're spotting things, in real time.
But we also appreciate that some people just love watching sewing. So you can put that on the email too if you're interested in being a participant, where you're sewing at your machine with your camera on, or whether you just want to be a viewer, where you just log into Zoom with no camera and you just watch and you sit back and enjoy an hour's worth of sewing. So
maybe you do the work in the privacy of your own sewing center.
Absolutely, yes.
So you can still make something.
Yeah.
You're just not on view, as it were.
Perfect. So there we are. Send an email to masterclass@ineverlearntosew.com, and we'll we'll get back to you in due course over the summer, as Carol compiles it all, and it will be sometime in October. So how about that? Exciting, hey?
Oh yeah, really looking forward to this. The pilot was such a success, lovely comments, and just a lot of encouragement to go a bit further with it. So yeah, I'm really excited to do it.
Well, there we are. That was a lovely in-depth chat about piping and boning and having lots of fun too, with a godpiece, a jockstrap.
Yeah.
Thoroughly enjoyed it, Carol. I hope you've enjoyed it too at home. You've got a bumper episode there, 1 hour and 15. We could just talk about it for hours.
I know. Time just zooms.
It does, doesn't it? It does. So let us know in the comments. And as always, keep an eye out. We've got 3 sessions left. We've got the quarterfinals, semi-finals, and then the finals. So we'll see you all very soon. Thanks, Carol, for your time. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Night,
See you.
Stuart.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.